he started beating me as well, and he led me to believe that it was all my fault.
He got away with that because many victims don't want to report it because of the repercussions of reporting it. That is what narcissists look for. They look for someone that is loyal, that will stand by them and stand up for them.
I had just barely turned 18, and I met him at work, and it was kind of a whirlwind romance. I just don't know, looking back at it, if I was just desperate to try to find somebody who was loving me, to love me, and I had just recently lost my dad, and we got married about 3 weeks after we met.
Was he older than you?
Yes, he was quite a bit older than me, 21 years to be exact.
So he saw a freshly minted 18-year-old who was going through some sort of emotional hardship. 21 years your senior, and in 3 weeks, he managed to get you to marry him.
Yes.
Okay, that is predatory behavior, and that would be sign number 1.
Most definitely.
Okay. So we already have someone engaging in predatory behavior towards you.
I mean, he hadn't really spoken very much of his past until after we were married.
And then what did you learn? Anything that caused alarm?
I found out that he was actually serving a prison sentence when I was born.
Okay.
For breaking and entering and holding somebody hostage.
It's not like he stole a candy bar from the local convenience store. He held a person at hostage.
Yes, and he had served a 5-year prison sentence for it.
And of course, he did not tell you this until you're married and you're 18 years old.
Yes, and that he had also kidnapped his ex-girlfriend and had held her hostage. And she just refused to press charges against him. And then he served a jail sentence, I guess, about a year, but he didn't tell me for what.
And this was back before probably dockets were public knowledge, where you could kind of Google it and look it up and see. This is, I'm assuming, pre-internet era.
Yeah. Well, for lack of a better word, I actually just found out a few weeks ago what that jail sentence was that he did not tell me about.
And what was it?
Domestic violence.
Okay. So he has a history that you did not know about because you're 18, you're barely not a child. He preyed on someone and convinced a young person, 21 years his junior, convinced her to marry him. And then you find out once you're married and you're young, your prefrontal cortex isn't even developed yet, and you find out in bits and pieces that he has an extensive violent past, to include domestic violence. And he got away with that because many victims don't want to report it because of the repercussions of reporting it. So how did that marriage go?
It started out okay. And then it was probably about 6 months in, and he started getting into drugs, and that's when he started beating me as well. And he led me to believe that it was all my fault. And, if I wouldn't give him money for drugs, he would beat me up and said, well, if you had given me money,
I wouldn't have had to do that.
Exactly. And he forced me to do things to try to earn money or earn the drugs for him.
This is classic narcissist/abuser behavior, where they blame their victims for their bad behaviors. If you wouldn't have done this, if you had just done that, then I wouldn't have had to bullshit. They made the conscious choice. He made the conscious choice to harm you. That is never your fault. So he then got you to do things that maybe you didn't want to do in order to earn money.
Correct, or earn him free drugs.
Did you have children with this man?
No, thankfully not. He tried to murder me twice, though.
How did he try to murder you?
It was shortly before my mom's wedding, and I was packing up, and he was telling me he didn't want to go to it. And all I said to him was, well, maybe I should go by myself. And I guess a switch turned on in him, and he kicked me in the face to knock me on my back onto the bed, and he started choking me and punching me, and he stabbed me a few times, broke a glass in my face, and somehow after a couple of minutes I was able to finally scream stop. And I looked down after he stopped, and there was just blood everywhere.
Wow. When you said he stabbed you, like with a blunt instrument of some sort, like a pencil?
Pocket knife.
He took out a pocket knife and stabbed you, smashed a glass in your face.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. This is not that any abuse is ever justified, but this is severe. You are lucky you're alive levels of abuse.
I look back at it now, and I'm amazed. And I lied to the police saying I was somebody else, and I tried to make up a story, which I could tell the police didn't believe me, but I was too scared to tell them the truth. And because A, I was scared of what might happen, and B, I believed that I loved him and that I could help heal him of the past that he had.
Let me just pause right there. I did face physical abuse and other forms of abuse. Nothing like what you faced. Nothing. But I too, the first time he was arrested, lied to the police. And I lied to the community when it was put in the paper, and I refused to testify against him. And the reason was exactly what you said. I was scared. In my case, I live in a small town, and like the backlash for living in a small town of having all this and everybody know it was embarrassing. And like you, I loved him. And I would like to delve a little bit more into your relationship, but there's something called a trauma bond. Do you know that term?
I've heard of it, but it's been quite a while since I have delved into that area.
So he trauma bonded you, and that is a technique narcissists use and a lot of other very devious, highly manipulative and abusive people use. And it's never the recipient, the victim's fault. It is their fault for what they did to you. So let me just say, the fact that you're alive and telling the story, and I presume you're not with him, you broke one of the hardest, it is equivalent, like I said, to breaking a heroin or cocaine addiction. And I can't say how proud I am of you because I know how hard that is.
Thank you.
You did the right thing because you did what you needed to do to save your life, my guess is. So don't ever think you didn't do the right. You did what was right for you in that moment. So what happened next?
Things got okay for a little while, and then he got back into drugs, and it got really bad where he was beating me every day. Like, he would even punch me in the back of the head while I was sleeping. The second time he tried to kill me, we pretty much had hit rock bottom. We were actually living with my mom, and it was probably about 3:00 in the morning, and I woke up to him trying to bash my head in with a laundry basket. And he was mad at me, he said, because the dog that we had started barking.
So was he on drugs at the time?
Yeah.
And he took a laundry basket and was trying to or going to, or he did beat you with it?
Like, I had blood in my hair. I even had pieces of the laundry basket stuck in my hair when I went to work the next morning.
And what, was your mom there at the time?
No, she was sleeping during all of this. And I went to work the next morning, and I thought I'd gotten out all the pieces of the laundry basket, but I hadn't. And I was at work crying.
Did you have support during this time?
I hadn't really told anybody. The one person I did tell before the second attempt, he told me, he said, well, maybe if you were more submissive to your husband, maybe this wouldn't be happening.
That is a trend I see so much. First of all, just saying maybe if you hadn't, as if something you did justifies them beating you, harming you, trying to kill you. And second of all, when they talk about being more submissive, we see this in churches all the time, where they will victim blame the woman for the husband's bad behavior and use some sort of hierarchy in a marital status or scripture or the church structure to justify and cover for that abuse. And to me, I call that spiritual abuse. It's whenever they weaponize your faith. And I don't know what your faith is, but it feels like he's weaponizing some sort of patriarchal, faith-based tradition to harm you and to make you think that you did something to cause his bad behavior.
Yeah.
How did that even make you feel? You're pouring your heart out to someone and they're blaming you.
I was devastated. I just didn't know what to do, so I never spoke out to it about it anymore until after the second attempt. And a dear friend of mine, who I'm still friends with to this day, he saw the pieces of the laundry basket and pulled me aside, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I just started gushing over everything that was going on. And then the part that struck me the most is that he said to me, he said, you have to make a decision, because if you stay with him, you're going to die, and you need to figure out if you want to live or not.
Wow.
And that was probably the most sobering thing I have to this day ever heard to my ears.
So just that one person in your life, and we all can be that one person to somebody that hears you, believes you, doesn't victim blame you, and actually says, I care about you enough to say you need to get out of this because I am fearful for your life. That is a friend. That is a good friend. And I'm glad that you guys are still friends to this day. That's amazing. So when you heard that, did it kind of click that you got to do something, or were you still so trauma bonded that you really couldn't?
I took a couple of days just to try to really ponder on what he said in our conversation. And that's when I decided I want to live. And I told my mom I wanted to leave him, and I needed to try to figure out a way to escape.
Oftentimes what they'll try to do is to triangulate your family and friends and try to get them on his side to make it look like you're the bad person. Did he ever try to do that?
He did with my mom. He was scared of the rest of my family.
Oh, okay. So what did he do with your mom? Did he try to paint you as crazy or unstable or a problem?
He told her about he has a mental illness, and which was true, but he failed to mention that he was a drug addict.
So he was trying to justify his behavior through, I have a mental illness, painting the story as if have sympathy, woe is me, instead of the whole picture of what's going on.
Exactly.
So how did you escape?
I was getting ready for work one morning, and he started punching me in the face. My mom she was out of town at the time. And I grabbed a few things and I ran out to the car, and he chased after me, and I just rolled down the window and I looked at him. I said, you know what? I want a divorce. And it felt like I smacked him in the face, and you saw the rage starting to burn in his eyes. And I just started up the car and I drove off, and he started chasing after me. And for a couple of blocks, and And then I just sped off.
Good for you. Yeah, whenever you say you saw the rage build up in his eyes, when I talk to people, a lot of them say whenever, if they're with a narcissist, whenever that sort of mask falls and they get into their rage, like they can actually see a physical difference in that person. Their eyes change, their face changes. Were you able, were you able to see that?
With him, it was, if anything, like a half second before he erupted. And I never knew. I mean, from one moment to the next.
You don't know, right? When I reflect on mine, I don't see it either. But some people I interviewed do see. They say that it physically, they change. But it feels like he was mostly in that anger, rage state, or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, he was.
And as you hinted to, he faced some sort of challenge as a child or abuse or...
Yeah, he did.
Well, I have the utmost sympathy for any child that has ever endured any form of abuse, or adult for that matter. But you're not responsible for those things that happen to you, but you are responsible for how you treat other people, even if all these horrible things have happened to you. So while I can empathize with that horrible childhood that he had no right to then in any way do any of the things he did to you. So after you drove away, did you ever see him again?
I had to coerce him as a way to try to get him out of my mom's house. Because, like I said, we were living in my mom's basement.
Okay.
So what I did was I bartered with him, telling him I'd stay with him if he checked himself into a psychiatric hospital to try to get the help he needed.
So you devised a plan, a perfectly acceptable plan to, one, get him help because he obviously needed it, two, to get him out of your mom's basement, and three, to get you away safely from him.
Yeah.
That's pretty clever. That's a pretty good plan. Okay. So did he agree?
Yes, he did.
So he checks himself into some sort of mental health unit. And then what?
I served him the divorce papers while he was in the hospital.
Okay. All right. Good for you. Did he ever come after you after that?
Yes.
How long after the papers were served did this happen?
This was actually after the divorce was finalized.
So we're talking months, if not a year later?
A couple of months.
A couple of months. Okay.
I received a phone call from an unknown number, which normally I wouldn't have answered, but something told me to answer. And it was actually the police. And he had gone to a therapist down at the homeless shelter, showed them the gun that he had bought off the streets. And he had told them that he had plans to hunt me down and douse me in gasoline, set me on fire, and then shoot me in the head.
And he went to the homeless shelter. Was there like a therapist there that he revealed this to?
Yeah.
Okay, so he was in therapy, revealed it. They have to obviously report something like this.
Yeah.
He told them, they reported it to the cops. The cops call you. Then what?
He recommended me just going to hiding for a while and until they try to find him.
Wow. So where did you hide?
I was able to go a couple towns over and find a place I could temporarily stay.
The police are telling you, you need to get out of your house, go hide somewhere, and we're going to go try to find him. Were they able to find him?
Yes.
Oh, thank gosh. Okay. All right. And did they lock him up so you were safe?
They did arrest him, and I went to his initial hearing.
Okay.
I just remember, and it was the last time I saw him. He just kept staring at me during the entire time, and he would answer the judge and the attorneys, and eventually the judge said, "You need to stop looking at her. You need to look at us."
Was he looking at you meanly or like with love?
Meanly. Yeah, very much anger.
How did that make you feel?
I was scared.
That had to have been terrifying for you. Did you testify against him there?
No, he ended up taking a plea bargain.
Okay. As they often do. So did this plea bargain involve jail time?
Yes.
Well, how long did he stay in jail?
I think maybe 9 months.
So after that 9 months, did he ever come after you?
I know he spoke to my mom a few times, but after that, I don't know. I had a protective order put into place. I mean, the sad part about it is the fact in Utah for domestic violence is only a Class A misdemeanor.
What?
It's not a felony. At least it wasn't at the time. I don't know if the laws have changed.
And do you know what he said when he contacted your mom?
He asked her for help, and then he asked if I would take care of his dog because he knew that I could give his dog a better life than he could being homeless.
Did you end up taking the dog?
Yes, she was one of the best things that's ever happened to me.
So I guess there's one good thing you got out of that experience.
She lived to be 19 years old, so.
Plus all your wisdom, I know, but that dog, that's nice.
Yes.
Wow. So we talked about husband one. I'm assuming there's husband two that you want to talk about?
He wasn't physically abusive, but he was psychologically abusive. Very much a mental narcissist.
From my own experience and from talking to people, the mental, psychological, deceit, lying, life going on behind your back games, in my experience with my narcissist, and my abuse did not reach your levels, that was 100 times worse than the physical abuse. At this point, how old about are you and how did you guys meet?
I was 24.
So 6 years later, you meet who eventually becomes husband number two. And how was the relationship at first?
The whole entire relationship, honestly, was bipolar. We met online. He was living in California at the time. And I went out to meet him. I thought things went well. And then even from the very beginning, he said he liked me, and then he said he didn't like me. And then he ended up moving in with me up in Utah, and which ended up leading us to move to several different states away from my family and my support system that I was starting to build there.
Okay, so he actively isolated you.
Then he tried to leave me, which I begged him not to go because I thought I loved him, and he just ended up being very, very controlling of me. He was telling me what I should wear. I was told what I should eat and what I should do, what jobs I should work. I was wanting to go to school to get a college degree. He was telling me what I should major in, and he would pick my classes for me.
So narcissism is ultimately all about control. That is a telltale sign, is this control, and they use various means to gain control over you. The most prevalent, at least at the beginning, normally is isolating you. So he moves you away. You didn't want to move, but you do because he wants to move. And now you're not in contact with your family and friends. So he isolates you from the support system. And while you're in a different state, he out of the blue one day says, I want a divorce. I want to leave you.
I'm the one who left him. We got into an argument one day because we were trying to have kids and I hadn't gotten pregnant yet. And we started arguing, and eventually he just said that he never loved me, and the thought of having kids with me made him want to vomit. And then he even told me that he found our dogs more attractive to him than I was.
So profound verbal abuse, emotional abuse, devaluing you, making you feel bad about yourself, or trying to make you feel bad about yourself.
And I asked him why he married me if he didn't love me or anything. He said, well, you were loyal.
Because that is what narcissists look for. They look for someone that is loyal, that will stand by them and stand up for them. That they prey on people that are empathetic and loyal. Are you an empath? Do you have a lot of sympathy and empathy for people?
I do.
Those are the characteristics they look for. So he admitted that's why he married you.
I just packed up my stuff and I got in my car and I drove back to Utah.
And was that the end of the relationship?
We tried to reconcile a couple of times, but I end up saying I didn't want anything to do with him anymore, and I moved on.
What did those reconciliation bits look like? Like what did you notice?
He would actually get a job because he didn't really work the vast majority of the time that we were together.
Okay.
At the end of the first reconciliation, he attacked one of my dogs, because by then I had multiple dogs. I screamed at him, told him to leave, and he did. And what led to the second reconciliation was his mom passing away, which I really loved his family. And they, at one point, said that they wished they could keep me in the divorce rather than him. Then at the end of that second reconciliation, when I filed divorce, he just started playing the victim. He started doing different things that made him sick all the time and tried to get me to come home from work. And I was just done with it. I just couldn't handle it anymore.
So he would pretend to be sick or use his parents or his mother's passing as a means of tugging at your heartstrings and getting you to come back into the relationship with him.
Yes.
Did he say other things that would have been hurtful, rude, unkind?
He just would tell me if I messed something up, or there was a few times I would get fired over something, and he would come unglued and start yelling and screaming at me, just telling me how pathetic I was and I should do better. And he's very disappointed with my behavior because it's unbecoming of me as a lady.
Wow. And yet he didn't have a job.
He worked maybe a couple of times and they would last a month or two, and then he would quit.
Okay.
He had this big dream of becoming a movie producer for big time movies, which was one of the reasons why we would move around so much. And which I got to meet some celebrities because of him, which
very cool.
Kind of cool. But on the most part, he just kept living all these dreams of doing all these different ideas that he was going to get rich quick with, and they would never pan out.
Was he attention seeking in his behavior?
Very much so.
Could you speak to that a little bit? Because narcissists love attention and they have these, we all have dreams and hopes, but they seem to often focus around power or prestige or attention rather than just, maybe I want to help somebody or something like that.
Well, he would, like, the very first time I can recall was shortly after we started dating. We went to the Sundance Film Festival.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I had hurt my foot, so I was on crutches. So he was trying to go around trying to pitch his movie idea that he was trying to get off the ground.
Okay.
So, he would go to some of the actors. He would talk to a couple of producers that were there. And he would also try to use me as a way of trying to get attention to himself and start talking. I would be walking around on my crutches and people would be like, "Hey, are you okay? Do you want some help?"
That's classic behavior too. So someone is seeing this woman on crutches hobbling around, offers condolences or sympathy or, "Hey, how are you doing?" And he doesn't like that attention on you, so he turns it and puts it on him and uses it as a segue for him to sell his idea.
Yes.
How did he behave toward your ailment, your broken foot, and you being on crutches? Was he sympathetic and kind and accommodating?
He just kept saying, "You should just get over it. It's not that bad. You're just overplaying your injury."
So he's projecting because he would overplay it. So he's thinking you're doing that. He can't stand the attention to be on you. He wants it on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's unable to offer sympathy or to empathize with you because that's another thing they can't empathize. They lack empathy. Were there any other ways that you can think of and would like to discuss that he psychologically abused you?
He was controlling, and when my family would talk to him and question some things, he would just get offended and be like, I'm just trying to do what's best for her. I'm just trying to help her.
Yeah.
These are the things that she should do so that way we could be happy.
That's another tactic. They'll say, I'm looking out for this person's best interest. I'm just trying to help them. You know what I mean? And they're not. Obviously, they don't care about your best interest. They care about what they need and getting their supply and getting their, whatever it is they need, attention, recognition, their needs met, whatever they think you can provide to them. So you eventually get enough courage and strength and you leave him and you divorce him. Did he ever cause you any problems after that?
A couple years later, we got audited by the IRS.
Okay.
And I let him file the taxes for us, and we probably got a refund for that tax year, but then they turned around and said that we owed them almost $10,000.
Yikes. So this was a couple years later when they do their audit and they're looking back 2-3 years ago. They're like, you owe us $10,000. And I'd imagine if you filed jointly, you're both liable for that amount.
We were, but he never paid a single dime.
Of course not. So did you end up paying the whole tax bill?
Yes, and it took a few years of tax refunds. He kept promising me that he would pay me back because he ended up going onto a VA disability. He never discussed, he's a veteran, but he never saw action. I guess he said he got attacked on the military base. He never mentioned it to me once in the time we were together. And all of a sudden, this happened to him, and he was able to qualify somehow for the disability.
Did you find that did he lie a lot?
Yes, constantly.
Pathological lying about things big and seemingly trivial things they lie about. Like, could you talk a little bit about the pathological lying?
He told me that he helped get the production going for Napoleon Dynamite.
Okay.
Which I found out later on that was not really the case.
Okay, so that's a big lie. That's not just
yeah,
just a small white lie. That is I'm responsible for Napoleon Dynamite, one of the most popular movies of like the early 2000s.
He would tell me about his jobs and all this money he was making, and then come to find out that he was making minimum wage when he was actually working. And I said, well, I thought you said you got all these sales. Oh, well, they said that they had to hold all this money out for my commissions. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, it just doesn't add up.
Even he would lie about how much money he would put in the gas tank and what he would buy himself to eat for lunch.
What was his motivation, do you think, for lying about his lunch consumption?
He just said, I thought you would be ashamed of me. And I said, well, we had lunch together not even an hour before. Why did you have to buy more lunch?
So you guys are on a budget, and he's breaking the budget for his own needs.
Pretty much.
So after you got away from him, was there another narcissist, or is 2 enough for one lifetime?
I wish 2 would have been enough for one lifetime, but yeah, I dated somebody briefly, and that just turned out very, very bad. And then I meet husband number 3, and everything was perfect. We never argued, and he actually worked, which excited me.
Yes, this one works. Okay.
Yeah, and he was starting his life over again, just like I was, because he had just gone through a bad divorce, and he had to move back home. and his parents were helping out while he was trying to get back on his feet.
Okay.
We get together, things were going great for a while, and we never argued, and he ended up getting custody of his kids. And then from there, it just started going downhill pretty quick.
So about how long are you into the relationship at this point when it starts to go down?
Almost a year and a half.
Okay, so he was able to keep up that facade for about a year and a half.
Yeah, and he worked pretty much that entire time. Shortly after he got custody of the kids, he quit his job, and he just started shutting down mentally on us. And like, he would just be playing video games all day, every day. I would ask him to help me with things, and he would get mad, saying that I should know how to do it by now. So I ended up having to try to figure things out myself, and I would get in trouble. His kids were badly abused by their mother, and so if I did something that he didn't like, he would undermine me, which was often. And I would get upset, and we would start arguing in front of the kids, which I look back now and it's like I should have kept my composure, but I was learning how to become a mom. I practically became a mom overnight.
Exactly, yeah.
And I wasn't getting any support from him. And his kids started going around telling his family that I was beating them and being very abusive to them, and he would never defend me. So pretty much between the kids and him, his whole family turned against me.
Okay, this is very classic as well. So let me back this up. How old were his kids?
At the time, they were 12 and 8.
Okay, and they had already been through, was it physically abuse they had dealt with their mom?
Physical and emotional abuse.
He gets full custody of them. He immediately stops working. Are you working at the time?
Yes, and there were times during that relationship from that moment time forward where I was sometimes working 2 or 3 jobs.
So you're working 2 or 3 jobs. You come home, you ask him for some help. He won't help you. And then in front of the kids that you're supposed to be the mother, you're functioning as the mother. You are the mother at this point. He's undermining you. And I know how that feels because my ex would do that in front of his kids as well. And then once they undermine you, the kids don't think they have to respect you or mind you or you've lost that authority over them, not in a bad way, but just as the parent-child relationship. And they don't respect you or listen or do anything you say. So I understand how that feels. So when did they start accusing you of harming them?
It was maybe a month or 2 after I got them into our place.
So there could have been a lot going on there. They could have been what they experienced with their mom, projecting that onto you. It could have been some sort of resentment toward you. There's a lot that could have been going on. But when they talked to his family about it, he didn't step in and say, this isn't true. I would never do that.
There was only one time, I think, that I can recall that he ever really stood up for me. And that's when his sister came in and got right in my face and said, if I ever find out that you harm them again, I will make sure you go to prison. And he said, I wouldn't be with her if she ever laid a hand on the kids. And then she just turned around, looked at him, and walked right out of the house.
The fact that he didn't stand up for you, and obviously those kids needed help. They needed psychological help. They needed to be in therapy and counseling and all that stuff because they had just come from an abusive environment, and now they're accusing you of what it seems like their mom did to them. Did they continue to keep up the story that you were harming them, or did they eventually, as they got older, stop that?
They kind of stopped temporarily for a while.
Okay.
But then they started up again, and it really started picking up towards the end of our relationship.
What did they accuse you of, like hitting them?
At one point in time, they did accuse me towards the beginning of hitting them and spanking them and forcing them to do things that they didn't want to do. And then a couple years later, with his girl, she accused of me of not feeding her and locking her in her bedroom when she was home, and not letting her have contact with any of her friends, and being controlling. And I mean, she said that about both me and her dad, which by this time he had shut down completely so much on us that sometimes I would go a couple of days without having him say a word to me. He would, like, he was awake and he would be on playing video games on either his PlayStation or on his computer, talking to his friends, watching TV at the same time, just keeping his focus on everything except for me and the kids.
Are these kids adults now?
Yes, the youngest one just turned 18 last month.
Do you have any contact with them?
No, they haven't reached out to me whatsoever.
I wouldn't be surprised if one day they do.
I hope so.
As they get older and kind of reflect and maybe get into counseling or therapy, and they understand more the dynamics of their abuse and their dad and how he played a role in everything, and then how you, I'm presuming, were a loving, caring parent to them, they may start to be able to parse that out the older they get. And I wouldn't be surprised if one day they reach out to you and say, you know, I'm sorry, or I misunderstood what was going on. I was confused, or, you know, I was traumatized from all this abuse and I didn't know how to process it. So did they ever call like CYS or anything on you?
Not that I was aware of. His daughter, the one that was the older of the two, she filed emancipation from us shortly before her 18th birthday. And that's when the accusations came out of not feeding her, locking her in her bedroom, things like that. And I lost it. I was like, you know, I mean, obviously I was upset, and he blamed the situation on me, saying that if I would have done a better job helping him raise the kids, she wouldn't have done that.
Wow. So, but of course, blame you instead of take responsibility for raising his own kids, right? And so he blames you that you didn't do a good enough job. Meanwhile, he's sitting there playing Nintendo or video games and staying up until all hours of the night, not working, and putting all parental duties and all household duties and all financial wage earning duties on your shoulders, and then saying you didn't do well enough.
Yeah.
Classic narcissist behavior. And I wonder if, those kids coming from an abusive family into that sort of environment, even, I mean, if, I'm sure your love and attention and care was all they really got. And then having that sort of a dad, the long-term damage that would do to them would be unbelievable as well, too. And I really do hope that one day they come around, because I assume you have feelings for them.
Yeah, I miss them terribly. I honestly do. And even because I would take them out to do one-on-one activities, and there were several times that they asked me why I didn't leave their dad, because they thought that I deserved better.
So they're dealing with some cognitive dissonance, or something's going on there where they're on the one hand blaming you for all these untrue things, and on the other hand, they get moments of clarity where they're like, why are you with him? He's not a good person. So it seems like they were kind of struggling between those two things.
Yeah, and when he did actually work, I actually would apply for jobs for him, because I was tired of being the only one working. So I would apply for jobs for him, and he would get mad for having him be called into job interviews. And
did he really think he had no responsibility in any way to you and the children?
Apparently not. He thought I was doing a good enough job, and I just needed to learn how to control my spending.
But he wasn't adding anything to the household.
No, he wasn't. And like he would go out and buy video games, and then he had to have this one truck that he fell in love with. He just had to have it. And I thought that maybe if I bought it for him, that it would motivate him to try to do things. And I still have the truck to this day. It just never panned out.
It did not do the motivate. It did not motivate him to get up off his butt and go get a job and be a decent human and husband and father.
Yeah, and I would even, like, when he would say that something about wanting to start his own business, I would be fully supportive of him, and I would go out and help him get the tools he wanted to start this business. I would apply for the business license for him and try to do advertising for him, and then maybe after a month or two, he'd be like, no, I don't want to do it anymore. People aren't wanting to pay me what I'm worth.
Wow. So, during this time period, was he able, you briefly mentioned was he able to turn people against you?
He definitely had his family all against me. His
Okay.
one friend that he made absolutely detested me, which, I mean, the feeling was mutual, to be honest.
I get that. Yeah.
And the few friends I was able to make, which I didn't have many friends because he would find fault in every single friend I tried to make.
Everyone. Yeah.
They would just get mad and they would just started to keep their distance from me because they were like, you could do better than him. You deserve somebody that would be more supportive of you, emotionally, physically, and be willing to help you out.
Yeah, no, that's often the case is, I even noticed that my friends would be like, why are you going back with him? Why are you with him? And they would start to distance themselves from me because they're like, it's hard on them too to see you going through all this different types of abuse. And to an outsider looking in, it's like, it seems so simple, just leave. But like with your case and with mine, I was attached to the kids. I was worried what's going to happen to those kids if I leave. I'm assuming something like that probably went through your mind as well. And it's just, there's so much complex layers that go into it that it's not just that easy to leave. And in my case, I don't want to speak for you though, I loved him. I really loved him. And so I wanted to make it work. And it was my third marriage as well. And for me, there was some shame in saying, oh gosh, I'm divorced for time number 3, So I wanted to make the marriage work, right? I did. I didn't want to be the woman that was running around in a small town who had been divorced 3 times. And I don't, like, in hindsight, I don't know why that bothered me. I'm sure it's something from my childhood that was fed into my mind that you don't get a divorce or, you certainly don't get 3. But, it's all these pressures that society puts on us that we internalize that keep us stuck.
Yeah, I was embarrassed of the idea of being divorced for a third time, and I was like, maybe just showing him that I'm willing to be there for him. One of these days he'll come around. We went through some really bad things together, and I thought by going through those things and staying by his side that he would realize, hey, things really aren't as bad as I thought they were, and she's not this person that I wonder if he ever conjured up in his head about me.
Because you're loyal, and that comes back to your loyalty, and I am too. And you thought by showing them the loyalty, hey, we went through this horrible time. I stuck by your side. I maybe even covered for you, or I certainly didn't make you look bad. I tried to be there for you during these hard times and be your support. You think that they're going to internalize that and be like, this is a really great person. I should treat them decently. But that's not how it works with a narcissist. They don't have that sort of reciprocal love and commitment and relationship. Everybody is a chess piece in their game. And it's all about what can that person do for me without any consideration of what maybe you owe to them.
I mean, I practically did everything. I ended up being both the husband and the wife and the mother and the father for the kids. And I was just wondering if he would ever come around and start being a partner. And it did eventually start leading to some major arguments. Sure. Because he never even held my hands out when we would go out. never put his arm around me if we did sit down on the couch together to watch TV or if we went to go visit his parents. He would never go interact with my family. When my mom would even come up to visit, he just never interacted with her. He would just sit on the computer and...
Wow. Now, was he physically abusive?
No. Whenever something would go wrong, I was always the blame for it.
Yeah, they won't take accountability.
No, he never did.
They can hit a curb and they'll blame the curb instead of them. It's like it doesn't matter. It's never their fault, but it's always someone else's fault. And usually it's the person whose least fault it is. Like, he's not a husband to you. He's not a parent to the children. He's not a provider of the household. He's not a contributor to the household. So, wow. When you eventually did go to leave him, I'm assuming because he wasn't violent, he let you go?
I mean, it was an easier divorce, but it still ended up kind of bad.
Of course, yeah.
We had some really bad things happen shortly before I left him, and he just still downplayed my feelings on what happened and just told me I was overreacting. Then he had a heart attack, and that terrified me. When he came home from the hospital, he started doing all the things the doctor told him not to do. And I just said to him, I said, I don't want you to make me a widow anytime soon. He's like, oh, you'll be fine. And it was at that point where I was just like, no, I can't do this anymore.
That's sort of like the ultimate, I don't care about you, you'll be fine.
And then when I told him I wanted a divorce and I had served him with papers, and he overheard his son talking to me about it. Right after his son left, he came out and pulled out one of his guns and held it to his head and said he wanted to blow his brains out in front of me. And he wanted to make sure I was there, so I knew it was my fault. He wanted to make sure that his brains splattered all over me.
Another form of abuse is whenever they threaten, like when you go to leave them or you don't do what they want, they threaten to harm themselves so that you feel like you're to blame and you need to step in and save them, and it's all your fault. And he even outwardly verbalized his intent was to make you feel bad for his actions.
Yeah, and I got on my knees and begged him to put the gun down and put the gun away. And
wow.
The next morning, I packed up all the knives in the house, the scissors, his guns, and I took him to his parents' house and told them what happened. And then shortly afterwards, I moved out and just tried to wipe my hands clean of everything and left. And that honestly was the hardest relationship out of the three of them to get out of.
Emotionally.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure at that point you are also trauma bonded to him. You love him. You have a bond with the children, even though I know at this point the daughter was emancipated or 18 and off on her own. Was the son still at home? He was, because he talked to you about it. Yeah. Whenever he talked to you, did he say things like, don't leave, or?
No.
Okay.
There were a few times where he asked me why I stayed too.
So maybe he was happy that you were getting to be free. He maybe started to see the truth, because when they're younger, they often don't see the truth, especially if there's like parental alienation going on or something like that. But then as they get older, I've noticed, and they get away from the controlling parent or the grandparents that are putting a false narrative about you on them, they start to think for themselves and are like, maybe she did love us. Maybe she did try to protect us. Maybe the problem was dad sitting there and on his computer all day while she was trying to juggle 3 jobs in a house. You can tell you care about these children.
I do.
Who are now not children, but they're your children. You care about them profoundly. Do you think that's what made leaving this relationship so hard, was the children?
I think so.
Yeah.
I raised them for 8.5 years.
So you raised these kids for 8.5 years, and then when you left him, it's gone.
Yeah.
That's very tough. Wow. I really hope that one day, soon, they reach out to you.
I do too.
I don't even know what to say. Those are 3. I think it's so worthwhile, and I want to just drive this point home. that third one, which was not physically abusive, was the hardest one to leave. And I think, or the hardest one to deal with. So it's the emotional abuse, it's the attachments, it's the all these sort of things that we see with narcissism and trauma bonds that make it so hard to break free of.
It is.
So, how do you feel today?
I'm happier now than I think I have been as an adult. I've been very fortunate to have met a man who has stayed by my side. We got married a few months ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And like, we have been through literal hell in the time we've been together. And I think that what has helped us build such a strong relationship, saying, hey, you know what? We survived, we went through this, but we survived it, and we survived it together.
Yeah.
We look at it as like we have each other, and that's what really matters. We have found a home together. We've found a home in each other.
Well, that's a happy ending. I mean, I'm so happy that you finally are happy and safe and in a mutually beneficial and rewarding relationship. And you've said throughout your story, there are ups and downs. I don't care who you are. You're going to have ups and downs in your life, but to be able to go through that together with someone who's working with you instead of against you or causing more problems that you don't need to have, that is a blessing. That is worth more than anything in the world, really, I think. So I can't say how happy I am to hear that we do have a happy ending, even though the story is anything but happy.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think you're incredibly brave to tell your story. I am certain it's going to be helpful to many of my followers, my viewers, people who see this. And thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And it was I'm honored to have been able to play a part in the story that you're trying to spread to others.